Joe. How's it going?
What's up, guys? Good to be back.
We're happy to have you. Last time we had you, we got so many people commenting on your background image of the bats on the wall, and I think one person thought it was swords, so they thought it was really cool.
It is swords. Yeah, let's pretend it's swords.
Exactly. So passing along the compliment. I'm going to start with actually a look at the minors, and one of the popular questions that Bump and I have continued to get, this will not surprise you, is, hey, how soon will we see Cole Young? And Cole Young raking and having a phenomenal game has added fuel to the fire. Tell us what you're seeing from Cole with Tacoma, and also how soon you think he could debut with Seattle.
Yeah, I've been watching Cole since he was a junior in high school, going back to, 2021 now. He's just grown up. I mean, he's a man at this point. He's added muscle. He looks way more physical, way more violent in the box. He's swinging harder. I'm an evaluator. I'm a scout inherently, but I'm also a nerd, you guys. And when you look at the data, I mean, Cole Young's average exit velocity is up almost 2 miles an hour. His peaks are higher. Actually, here's a good one. Cole Young's hard hit rate, which is balls hit over 95 miles an hour, is up to 44%. Do you know what Julio Rodriguez hard hit percentage is this season? 44%. Now, the level of competition that Cole Young is going to see when he jumps from AAA to the big leagues is going to bring that down. But it just points to how much harder and how much more physical he is in the box. So when will I think they see him? I don't think you'll see Cole Young for probably another couple of weeks. Get this kid, more than 20 games of a hot streak. It's his first look at Tacoma. I think he's still 21, 22 years old. So I think if you do this kind of tear for 2-3 more weeks, I think there's a good chance you see Cole Young in a week and a half, 2 weeks from now.
Wow.
Is that what's missing from this team? A guy like Cole Young? What other holes do you see in this Mariners roster?
I mean, the biggest thing that I've been talking about with this roster, despite the team finding ways to win, is there's not a lot of depth as it pertains to hitting against left-handed pitching. I mean, Mitch Garver has had his struggles over the course of the last 2 seasons in Seattle, and he's currently your number 5 hitter in the lineup against left-handed pitching. That's not good enough. You've got Leo Rivas in there batting right-handed. You've got Leody Taveras in there batting right-handed. You've got just a different cast of characters from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that need to improve. This team needs a right-handed bat if they're going to survive through September and October. And to answer your question, Bump, I don't think it really matters where it is. It could be first base, second base, third base, left field. You could find a spot for a right-handed bat in this lineup pretty effortlessly. So I think that's what I would circle as the trade deadline approaches.
One of the conversations that we kept having during the winter is, God, the Mariners have such a good farm system, but is it harder than we think to move these prospects? Because it sure seems like teams aren't buying. Joe, do you expect that to potentially change at this trade deadline where maybe dipping into the farm system does become a bit easier?
I don't think the issue is it's such a seller's market, and teams don't want to ship off their best prospects for 3 months of a player.
Right.
To answer your question more directly, I think it just depends on how many sellers there's going to be, and I just don't see that many sellers being out there. I said on another podcast last week, I think you might have to look at the Rays again. I think you have to look at the Brewers, potentially with someone like Rhys Hoskins, Yandy Diaz in Tampa Bay. But the issue is, there's just not that many teams that are willing to throw in the towel at this stage, even in July. I mean, you look at what the Diamondbacks did in 2023. They won 84 games, and they went to the World Series. So if you're looking at Arizona and you're like, well, what if we tried to poach Eugenio Suarez and bring him back for 3 months, kind of rejuvenate the clubhouse and get a third baseman with a little bit more pop into the lineup? I mean, the Diamondbacks are 4 or 5 games under 500 right now. They could be 4 or 5 games under 500 when the trade deadline comes, and they might still look at it and go, we could win 85 games this year and make another run. So the addition of that extra playoff spot has certainly muddied things, and more importantly, from a front office perspective, it's pushed prices way up, because when there's less sellers, there's less inventory, and when there's less inventory, you just got to pay more for what some general managers would consider to be like marginal upgrades.
Yeah.
The MLB Draft overwhelms me. Not gonna lie to you. There's a lot going on there. Any names that we should be talking about?
Yeah, man, this draft is not going to make it any easier for you, Mike. So it's a draft that isn't super top heavy. I think most people that you talk to in the industry would agree that players like 2 through 10 are separated by not much. They're fractional differences. It just depends on the type of player that you're looking for. So I think this is a year where, every team has a certain amount of money that they can spend in the draft across 10 to 20 rounds, depending on how you want to contextualize it. I think Seattle is going to be in a position at pick number 3 where they take the player who has the most bang for their buck. Who can you get to take the least amount of money and provide the most impact? I think that's ultimately probably going to be either a college pitcher or perhaps Iva Arquette out of Oregon State, but I wouldn't expect the team, at least from this chair, to shell out a ton of money for a guy like Ethan Holiday or Seth Hernandez. And that's mostly because you're going to have to pay a ton of money to get that player to Seattle. I think they would rather just spread the wealth out because they think the difference between Ethan Holiday and Seth Hernandez and the guy at 8, 9, or 10 just isn't that it isn't that vast.
I saw ESPN has a mock, and granted it's a mock, right? But they had them taking Cade Anderson. What do you make of that decision, and how likely is it that you think they go with an arm, whether a college pitcher or even out of high school?
Well, the thing about this draft that I think does make it a college arm likely is there are tons of arms in the top 10. I mean, currently in my top 10 prospects for the 2025 draft, I've got 4 college pitchers and 1 high school pitcher. So just by virtue of odds, I think it makes sense. And, you look at what Seattle has done over the course of this Jerry DiPoto, Scott Hunter, Andy McKay, regime. They know how to develop arms. And even if you look at it and say, well, they have 7 good arms right now, why don't they just take another one? I mean, value is value. And if you have to flip one of those arms at the trade deadline for a hitter, they can do that. So I think the odds of them taking a college pitcher, Cade Anderson included, is pretty high, and I would certainly have him on the short list.
How do you evaluate the pitching situation now for the Mariners? There's a lot going on. Obviously, Kirby, his last 2 starts have been kind of suspect, but I'm not too worried about him there. But lots of names we're talking about. What's your eval?
I think that they've done it the right way in terms of calling Logan Evans by default the number 7 arm in this rotation. As much as his performances have been encouraging, he also isn't missing bats. He also isn't striking anybody out. And in a day and age where your luck will run out if you're not missing bats, I think they probably sent him to Tacoma at the right time. I think Emerson Hancock and his ascent has been dramatically under-respected in the public sphere. I mean, touching 97, touching 98 from that arm slot and holding that sort of velo into the 4th and 5th inning, I don't think you can sweep that under the rug. This is a different Emerson Hancock than what I've seen. He, for me, was a quad A guy that could be shipped back and forth between Tacoma and Seattle. I think he's a legitimate number 4 starter right now if the stuff doesn't back up on him. So, at the end of the day, you have 5 guys in this rotation that have baseball cards and track records that you can't diminish, and you can't push an Emerson Hancock above any of these guys until they really slip up. Now, if Bryce Miller comes back and he's still struggling to throw strikes, then you have that conversation about a tune-up in Tacoma for Bryce. But, there's 5 guys in this rotation that, assuming they're all healthy, you just can't replace them. They're too established.
You said something that made me jump on Baseball Savant and look up. You said the velo he's getting, the action he's getting from that arm slot. So I went on there and they show kind of where he releases the ball. What is it about that arm slot that makes that fascinating to you?
Yeah, so the average launch height in Major League Baseball is 68 inches above the ground. And Emerson Hancock is slightly below that. And when you are below that, like, this is why Brian Wu has been so successful. It's a lower arm slot that is high velo, and it creates that flat approach to the plate. When you're Emerson Hancock and you are throwing the fastball up in the zone from that low arm slot, and it's at 96 or 97 miles an hour, you're creating a flat approach angle. So a flat approach angle, we're getting really nerdy, guys.
I like this. Let's go.
Nerd out, Joe.
A flat approach angle. Yeah, a flat approach angle makes it so the plane of the baseball coming to the plate does not match the plane of a baseball bat coming through the zone. And so that's why people swing under the flat approach angle fastball at the top of the zone. Emerson Hancock has the low slot. He's got the big velo. He's spotting the fastball at the top of the zone. And I think when you have that foundational pillar of fastball value, you can build a breaking ball, you can build a changeup, you can build an entire arsenal around just that one trait. And the thing that we've seen with Hancock over the years that has been such a struggle is he's had to pitch the fastball down in the zone because it was 91 to 93. And the changeup and the slider were kind of nullified because he didn't have a weapon at the top of the zone. So all of that is a long-winded way of me saying this is legitimately a different Emerson Hancock than we have seen in a Seattle Mariners uniform. And assuming he stays healthy and assuming he keeps doing what he's doing, they might have developed another legitimate rotation weapon.
There's a lot to love about the farm system, particularly the group they have in Everett, but those guys are also not entirely close to debuting. So it's something that you feel really good about, but it's hard to really get people like jacked up about, what's to come this year or early next year. How about the group that's a little closer? When you look at the group where you could start seeing a name or two later this year, early next season, sometime, before the All-Star break of next year, who among that group do you kind of have your eye on?
I mean, we already talked about him, but Cole Young, he has just transformed himself into a different player, into a different type of player. Another, metric that I can use for Cole Young is he's running an 8% in-zone whiff rate right now. Like that's elite. Like that's Bo Bichette level contact quality and bat to ball skills. So I think you're going to see Cole Young pretty soon. The other one is obviously Harry Ford. It's such a muddy topic, you guys. I don't really know what to make of Harry Ford because he's been really good and his performance is just really elevated in Tacoma. But with Mitch Garver in Seattle making quite a bit of money, with Cal Raleigh, in Seattle for the next 6 or 7 years as the number one catcher, it's really hard to find a spot for Harry Ford. So I think he is going to be the backup catcher in Seattle in 2026 if he's not traded before then. And ultimately, if the trade deadline comes and goes, in August and September, it wouldn't surprise me to see Harry Ford get a little bit more run, whether it be at third base or left field or just in the field a little bit. But I've heard people say, why don't you put him in left field, put him at first base, get him reps? I think for the time being, you keep him at catcher, you keep showcasing him at catcher, and that way teams that want to trade for him know exactly what they're getting behind the plate.
I know it's early, but do you think the Mariners win the division? And if they don't, why? What's going to hold them back?
I'll make this very simple. If Logan Gilbert comes back and he's healthy and he stays healthy and he's the Logan Gilbert that everybody knows, they're going to win the division. I think it's that simple. I think if you have Gilbert and Kirby, who is going to bounce back, and you have Wu and you have Castillo and you have Miller, who I think is also going to bounce back in some way, shape, or form, that rotation is too good not to win this team 87, 88, 89 games at a minimum with how the offensive approach has changed. This team isn't striking out as much. They're walking more. They're hitting a ton of home runs. Even if, guys like Polanco or Raleigh or Julio take a slight step back, I still think the fundamental philosophical differences with this offense are going to be enough to buoy them where they need to be to let the rotation just run wild. So I think it's that simple, Michael. I think it's just if Logan Gilbert comes back, he's Logan Gilbert. I think this team is going to win the division this season.
Overslot podcast host Joe Doyle. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.